In 1930, Mill Valley's population was 4,164. Okay, and in 1936, the present City Hall was built by a WPA-funded project. So that was another one of Roosevelt's groups that he started up, basically. And also, in 1939, the Mill Valley Golf Course and Clubhouse was bought with bond-issued funds. And the Golden Gate Bridge opened up in 1937. Construction plans were approved by the Tamalpais Forest Fire District, which would provide the fire lookout during the fire seasons. The site is about 400 feet above the end of the traveled road, and an aerial tramway was used to haul all the materials up to the site. The tramway was about 1,000 feet long and was operated by a powered hoist. The structure was built of native stone, steel, and wood, situated on the uppermost part of the east peak of Mount Tamalpais. Commands a view of 360 degrees. Excellent fire visibility. He said, "The Depression is an expression which has much more significance for me today than it did at the time. I did not appreciate the problems or the struggle which confronted my parents until I became one myself." I'm trying to figure out his age. I mean, he's probably well up in his 80s now, so he was probably a child or teenager, I guess, during that time. I can remember serious discussions between my mother and my dad, usually around the table after dinner, in which words like the Depression and pay cut were prominent, but it didn't really register with me. Looking back, I think the canyon suffered much less than the experience than other places in the country. I don't know anybody's dad who lost his job, nor did any of my friends seem to suffer anything I would characterize as a real privation. So I actually felt kind of sheltered from the whole thing. The economy did have some limited impact on us. If one kid owned a football, everybody enjoyed the use of it. I think Roosevelt did, he did that on a national scale to try to, it was like the stimulus trying to get a lot of people jobs, and it didn't necessarily mean, I don't think, that the people who were in the CCC came from Mill Valley. They could have come from any place, basically, to be in it, as well as the WPA. And it's a good question. I don't know whether there were a lot of people from Mill Valley. I would suspect that people in Mill Valley already had their jobs and their livelihoods. It was already a pretty affluent place then. I don't know I know people commuted into the city for jobs, and I don't know how their jobs fared, if they were in the finance industries or whatever they did in the city that they commuted to. So in the Mill Valley Record, which was the newspaper at the time, they published every week, and the issue that occurred, I guess, November 1st, which was 3 days after the stock market crash, didn't have anything about the stock market crash in that newspaper. So I assume they had already gone to press before that. But on November 8th, which is the next one, the only article they had was on page 1, but it says, "A recent panic was no accident. A top-heavy credit is explained." So this is by Frederick Thompson, member of the advisory board of the Bank of Italy in Mill Valley. Market panics grow out of a condition in which there are many more people selling than buying. The word panic comes from the Greek extreme fright, supposed to be inspired by the god Pan. So he's trying to explain why this happened, I guess. On November 15th, there was an article, and this one actually wasn't on page 1. It was kind of buried in the newspaper. "Residential building hit by tight money." Let's see. Babson says, "Unsatisfactory mortgage market, chief cause of decline, also some overbuilding of residences. Improvement depends upon lowering of money rates. Maybe bargains in the foreclosure sales." And I'm trying to think of where I saw I mean, it did have an effect on the amount of building that went on. Building definitely stopped or, went to a minimum. A lot of people just, they lived and worked here. They worked in the store, the shops and stores. And, it was a little self-sufficient community in that way. So maybe they weren't that affected by it. They had their money and they'd be more affected by the house getting, destroyed. I mean, 1929 was an eventful year because of the fire, which was in July. It really destroyed it. It stopped at a certain point, and the wind changed direction. And if the wind hadn't changed direction, the whole town would have burned down. Basically, it was really the fact that after so many days, we were just lucky that the wind changed direction. But a good portion of the town was gone. I mean, I'm not sure exactly where the line was here, but anybody at the upper uh, levels, the higher elevations were definitely, their houses were definitely destroyed, completely destroyed. It's had such a lasting effect. I mean, the fire department is so important here, and still is. There's still that same danger. I always talk about, they did a survey of the top city services a few years back, and the library came in second, which I always like. The library came in so high. We came in second to the fire department. We came in ahead of the police department. But the point is, the fire department was the number one most important service in this city, more than the police department, more than anything else. You know, that's what scares people, is could there be another one? So that was already, going on, and people were probably having rebuilding from that, and that probably had more economic damage than anything else, I would assume. And then the depression hit, and, maybe it didn't affect people as much here. Interesting that Lloyd would say that he didn't know anybody that, and he lived in Cascade Canyon, so didn't know anybody that was impacted by the depression. So I don't know. It's not as much as you think it might be, I guess, or more than in other communities.